He had wondered how long it had been. Minutes? Hours? How would Jay know? He couldn't tell time with no watch. There he was, sitting on that table waiting for the doctor to come in. Jay was never all that comfortable when it came to seeing a doctor, and this was beyond no exception. After all, he had been forcibly brought here by, well, strange-looking folk. Soon the door opens and in walks the doctor. He had a doctor's coat and headgear, along with a stethoscope around his neck, but he was also a giant smiling green rubber balloon elephant. His name tag read Dr. Balloon Pachyderm, and standing alongside him was a big pink girly-looking elephant wearing a nurse's cap.
Hello, Eletoon. What brings you in here today?
Jay was in a state of shock, but mustering up the courage he had, he spoke to the doctor.
I was brought in by these balloon elephants, and they said that I looked rather sick and brought me in here.
Oh, poor little guy. Well, not to worry. A bit of my treatment will make you feel all better.
The doctor went over to a drawer and pulled out a pair of what looked like puffy white cartoon-style gloves. The very same gloves the doctor and nurse were wearing. He then remembered that all the other balloon elephants were sporting a pair of the same gloves. Perhaps they're a staple feature?
First things first,
said the doctor.
we need to put these on.
Jay took the gloves and put them on, flexing his fingers a bit to try and get a good feel.
Okay, I shall run a test to see if they work.
Doctor began to feel around the young patient, squeezing every bit of his body, and every time he did, Jay kept wondering what this test was about. It wasn't long until he realized what the gloves did. They made his body all to one-ish and flexible.
Yes, my gloves work. We're now ready to start the procedure.
The doctor grabbed a gas mask which looked to be attached to a helium tank that the nurse was standing next to. He attached the mask to Jay's mouth and gave the nurse an OK sign. She turned the nozzle and thus began the procedure. The mask started to fill the young man full of air, inflating him, making him rounder. His arms and legs were disappearing beneath, leaving his feet, head and gloved hands sticking out. Soon the gas was turned off by the doctor. He then went to Jay, removed the hose, and placed some kind of plug into his belly button.
Now don't open your mouth until I say so. We don't want you to deflate and have to start the process over.
Doctor said to him, who nodded. And then he went into a cabinet searching for something. He then found what appeared to be a piece of light blue gum, but it looked all shiny and rubbery. Jay opened his mouth hoping it would make him deflate, and the doctor stuffed the gum into his mouth. The gum had a bit of a blueberry flavor to it. Doctor then placed a hand under his jaw, then the other on his head, and began making him chew the gum.
That's right. You want it a bit, and then let's see you make a bubble.
He chewed the gum, and then after a while, when the doctor placed his hand on his tummy, he knew it was time to blow a bubble. And so blow a bubble he did. And it kept on getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Was this thing gonna pop at any point? It didn't seem so, for it was now as giant as himself.
Nurse, I will help with this.
Doctor and Nurse Elephant got on the boy's sides and began to bring the bubble down on top of him. They then began molding the light blue, rubbery substance all around his body. They molded it into the gloves he still had on, until it all came to look like he was wearing a rubber suit.
Now it's time to get you fitted, little one. Oh, nurse.
Nurse giggled as she came over to the two.
All right, just hold still as the nurse gets rid of all that yucky humanity. That way you'll be ready to be made into fine young Eletoon.
Eletoon? Is that what the things were called? He should have been scared out of his wits, knowing full well that these balloon things were taking his humanity away and making him into one of them. But somehow, he was feeling lightheaded from the inflation earlier and was curious as to how farther this was going to go. Suddenly he found himself underneath the Nurse Eletoon's large, yet kinda cute bottom. Nurse then sat down on top of Jay and made him make a loud sound, kinda like a whoop cushion.
Oh, excuse me. Hello, ladylike.
Giggled the nurse. As she got up, Jay was now completely flattened as the doctor picked him up and wiggled him a bit.
Now that the rubber has become a part of you, here comes the fun part. We're going to get you into Eletoon shape.
He then got what appeared to be a large hollow mask shaped like an elephant's facial features, but only the long trunk. The doctor stuck Jay's face into the mask and began to push into it. After a while of molding, shaping and morphing, the doctor pulled Jay's face out of the mask with a sklurp, revealing an elongated Eletoon trunk. He then started tugging and pulling on his ears, shaping them into more elephantine proportions.
Almost done. Now let's get some air into you, little guy.
The doctor said cheerfully. The nurse rolled in a tank that was labeled Anima. The young rubber elephant's eyes widened and he whimpered as he knew what an enema was. Doctor just patted his head and told him,
Don't worry. Nurse will be here, so don't you fret. Hey, nurse.
She smiled and went over the nervous new Eletoon, and she then opened his mouth, pressed her lips against his, and began to blow, filling Jay with air. While this was going on, Doctor took the opportunity to start the air enema. Pretty soon it was all done.
Oh, just one more thing.
Doctor then tugged on the small of Jay's back just above his bottom, forming an elephant tail.
And I believe this is yours.
Nurse said, handing Jay a hat. It was his favorite blue cap, and was always so happy wearing it. The new Eletoon was led outside where a violet, female elephant wearing a red hat with a flower attached to the side, and a deep blue elephant wearing a tie, glasses and fedora were waiting.
Here we go. Where Mom and Pop have been waiting so patiently.
Jay hobbled over. He was still rather woozy from being filled with air and looked at them both.
Papa? Mama?
The mama elephant wrapped her trunk around Jay and brought him into a hug.
Hello, my sweet baby. Did you have a nice time at the doctor?
Jay nodded as he nuzzled into his mama's hug.
I must say, the doctor certainly fixed you up real good,
said the Papa Eletoon. The young Eletoon smiled as he reached his trunk over, grabbed Papa's glasses, and placed them on.
They look good on you,
chuckled Papa as he pulled out another pair. And so with the young Eletoon in the middle of his parents, the three Eletoons bounced away for some Eletoon fun at home while the doctor waved goodbye to them. He then smiled and said,